It's been 80 years since Adolf Hitler, let's say, departed, and yet the world is still obsessed with theories about the next great war. And frankly, on behalf of all of us content creators, I'd like to thank our global leaders for giving us fresh material every single year. They never disappoint. Between Donald Trump's Third World War rhetoric, Vladimir Putin's aggressive expansionism, the usual chaos in the Middle East, and that chubby rocket man Kim Jong-un posturing in North Korea, the whispers of World War III are getting louder. A lot of statesmen point to the Russia-Ukraine war and say this could be it. Look, I'm against war too, but let's be real. Peace is a beautiful dream, but history has shown us that peace is usually just a short nap between conflicts, especially when these guys are in charge. So, is a World War III actually possible? And who would be on what team? In this week's episode, we're going to look at a possible World War III scenario. But let me warn you up front, I'm not here to give you some feel-good, utopian fairy tale like some of my colleagues. If you like this kind of no BS talk, you know what to do. Let's rewind to 1945. As World War II was ending, the massive Soviet army in Central and Eastern Europe was making Britain very, very nervous. Winston Churchill was the first leader to see the problem coming. He knew Stalin couldn't be trusted, and his rising power was a major threat. So, even though they were allies against the Nazis, Churchill ordered his generals to draw up a plan. It was called Operation Unthinkable. The plan was for a surprise joint attack by British, American, and French forces to push the Soviets back to their pre-war borders. They would integrate British and American will upon Russia. And get this, the plan included rearming captured Nazi soldiers to fight with them against the communists. You heard that right. That's how scared they were of the Soviets. But the British generals got cold feet. The Soviet Union's terrifying manpower and sheer number of tanks made them pause. The US was also still busy with Japan and wasn't too focused on Europe's future just yet. So, the first real plan for World War III was cancelled, labeled militarily impracticable. Still, Churchill believed he had an ace up his sleeve, America's new nuclear weapon. And let's be clear, while the bomb was dropped on Japan to end the war, it was also a message sent directly to Moscow. Between 1945 and 1949, the West drew up multiple plans to nuke the Soviets into oblivion. One of them was called Operation Dropshot. The plan was to hit 100 Soviet cities with 300 nuclear bombs and 29,000 high-explosive bombs, wiping out 85% of their industrial capacity in an instant. It was meant to be a total collapse. But then, a little bad news for the planners. On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its own nuclear bomb. And just like that, America wasn't the only kid on the block with a nuke anymore. Operation Dropshot? Cancelled. From that moment on, the idea of a direct nuclear strike became a suicide pact, and the world entered the age of proxy wars. We had a few close calls, of course. In 1983, a Soviet officer correctly identified a missile launch warning as a false alarm, saving the world. Then in 1995, a Norwegian research rocket almost triggered a Russian retaliatory launch. We got lucky. Fast forward to today, and the conversation is back. A key figure in this is, of course, Vladimir Putin. He wasn't born into a communist ideology, but he wants to restore Russia to its Soviet-era glory. He's a pragmatist. If Russia's interests are at stake, he'll invade Georgia, as he did in 2008, without blinking. He's not the kind of guy who's afraid of his generals. He's the type to cut someone off mid-sentence and tell them to stop thinking because he'll do the thinking for them. Yeah, that kind of guy. His placement of nuclear-capable missiles in Kaliningrad, able to hit half of Europe, and his recent stationing of nukes in Belarus are all part of his pushback against what he sees as NATO encroachment, with Ukraine being the most painful example. When the West-leaning government won out in Kiev, Putin couldn't tolerate a Western sphere of influence on his doorstep. The 2014 conflict blew up into a full-scale war in 2022. Everyone screamed World War III is starting, but the US and Europe didn't jump in directly, leaving Ukraine to fight alone. As for other players, North Korea isn't driven by imperial ambition like Putin. Their nukes are purely for protecting the Qin dynasty. The Middle East? It's a world of competing interests, a chaotic mess, but unlikely to be the starting point of a world war because every major power has a hand in the pot and prefers to keep the chaos managed. The more realistic scenario for a true great power conflict? Look to the Pacific. China has become an economic giant, and the US is trying to push back with trade wars and by supporting Taiwan. This is the real heavyweight match. So today, the map is once again divided. You have the Western Bloc, led by the US and Europe. And an Eastern Bloc is forming with Russia, China, Iran, and even India. But it's not that simple, because then you have Turkey. Officially a NATO country, but they also like to keep their options open with Russia. This shows just how messy the alliances are this time around. And if you notice any parts of this video that don't make sense, please let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching,